Tonight, the curtain is drawn on the activities of the 9th National Assembly as members of the upper legislative chamber take turns to speak on their accomplishments in the past 4 years. He is in our custody. The Department of State Service confirms the suspended governor of CBN, Governor Emefiele, is undergoing investigation at its facility after earlier denying arresting him. A court strikes out Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi's application to question INEC over alleged technical glitches witnessed on the IREV after tendering video evidence before the tribunal. And 4 children found alive after surviving a plane crash and spending weeks in Colombia's Amazon jungle.
And on business news tonight, Nigeria's currency hits lowest level against the dollar at the investors and exporters forex market window following suspension of Central Bank Governor Emefiele from office by President Bola Tinubu.
Thank you. 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 Thank you.
And we begin tonight with a rare emotional display by the President of the 9th Senate and Chairman of the 9th National Assembly, Ahmed Lawan. Well, he was moved to tears after delivering his valedictory speech before his colleagues in the Senate chamber. Well, it marked the end of a 9th Senate, which gives way for the 10th National Assembly to be inaugurated on Tuesday, June the 13th. Well, it reflected on the performance of the Assembly, which he rates high, but adds that they suffered from negative stereotypes and what he called public's limited understanding of legislative roles and functions.
The 9th Senate, the 9th National Assembly, was inaugurated 4 years ago at a time of heightened political tensions and threats to security, especially by Boko Haram, which perpetrated acts of abductions, suicide bombings of civilian targets and government infrastructure in the Northeast. This situation was further worsened by decades of communal conflict between nomadic herders and farmers in the North Central, militancy in the South-South, and agitations for devolution of powers and succession in the Southeast and Southwest. The economic outlook was equally grim, with the predictions of slow real GDP growth, depressed oil demand and its impact on Nigeria's earnings and prospects for economic growth, huge infrastructure deficit, leakages and revenue losses, uncertainties among investors, growing youth population, and rising unemployment, as well as high inflation rates, among others. To further complicate things, we also inherited a legacy of antagonistic and sometimes hostile legislative-executive relations characterized by mutual distrust and suspicions. Some consequences of that strained relationship included delays in the passage of budget, weak oversight by committees, and non-compliance to legislative summons, amongst others. In response to these challenges, we adopted the slogan, "A Senate that works for Nigerians," and a legislative agenda that defines our legislative priorities in the short, medium, and long terms, and specific actions towards meeting our overall objective of providing good representation for Nigerians. Our approach was evidence-based and drew from the study on citizens' expectations of the 9th National Assembly. The broad philosophical outlook of the agenda emphasized a holistic approach to economic, socio-political, and governance reforms rather than piecemeal or haphazard interventions. Our vision from the start, therefore, was to lay a foundation for reforming the various aspects of our national life through purposeful lawmaking and oversight. In crafting laws, we emphasize legislations that address some of the fundamental issues that have impeded development and undermined social cohesion. As a body, we conducted ourselves ethically as required of government officials and place national interest above any personal or sectional considerations. As a result, the period between 2019 to 2023 has produced the most consequential legislative outputs of any assembly since the return to democratic governance in 1999.
Well, we'll bring you more from today's valedictory session for the 9th Senate. But now that it is official that the life of the 9th Assembly has ended and a new assembly gets ready to begin next week, as members of the 10th National Assembly prepare to be sworn in, our National Assembly correspondent Terry Kumi takes a look at the 9th Assembly and some notable moments.
The lifespan of the 9th National Assembly has come to an end, but it will always be remembered for what it did or failed to do. To begin with, in 2019, the ruling All Progressives Congress ensured the emergence of Senator Ahmed Lawan as Senate President and Mr. Femi Gbajabiamila as Speaker of the House of Representatives. This is to correct the mistake of 2015 when Senator Bukola Saraki and Mr. Yakubu Dogara connived with the main opposition, the People's Democratic Party, and emerged as leaders of both chambers against the preferences of the APC ship. This move instantly created an impression in the minds of many Nigerians that the 9th Assembly would automatically be a rubber stamp to the executive who handpicked its leadership. So what did the 9th National Assembly do to suggest that it is not a rubber stamp of the executive? The lawmakers say the relationship between the legislature and the executive was rancor-free, leading to the passage of landmark bills, which include the Electoral Act Amendment Bill, Petroleum Industry Bill, Proceeds of Crime Recovery and Management Bill, Money Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Bill, Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Bill, Deep Offshore and Inland Basin Production Sharing Contract Bill, as well as Banks and Other Financial Institutions Bill, all of which were signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari. The 9th National Assembly also boasts of returning the country to the January to December budget cycle and successfully amending some sections of the Constitution. While these seemed like numerous reasons to pat the 9th National Assembly on the back, its oversight functions were called to question, as well as the speedy approvals of all loan requests of the former president and response to burning national issues, especially the Senate. However, the House of Representatives intervened in some matters involving labor unions and the federal government, as well as ensuring the evacuation of Nigerians from foreign countries due to COVID or unrest. Meanwhile, some interesting moments were captured during the 9th National Assembly, specifically the House of Representatives. Like the rowdy session that occurred during the consideration of the Petroleum Industry Bill.
Honorable Igwe, whatever issue there is, we will resolve it. This is not going to resolve. We will resolve it. We will resolve it.
The former managing director of the Niger Delta Development Commission losing consciousness while answering questions on allegations of fraud. There was also this exchange between the former Minister of Niger Delta Affairs and the Niger Delta Committee of the House, resulting to the famous phrase, "Off your mic."
Even out to members of National Assembly, but no, you don't know about it.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Off your mic. It's okay.
She
Off your mic, Honorable Minister.
You are like me. I was a member like you. I did not know what was going on.
Honorable Minister.
Yes,
it's okay.
Not forgetting the heated exchange between former Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, and the Committee on Treaties and Agreements.
Do you want to meet the South-South contract? If you want to meet, say you want to meet it, let's go to the other one.
Can you listen to me? Follow me. If we continue to serve our geopolitical zone, this country will not be nice. If Zone 8 gets their fair share, and next year,
Have you not approached me on South-South? Have you not approached me on South-South Rail? Have you not approached me on South-South Rail?
I have not.
You have?
I have not.
Mr. Chairman, you have approached me.
It's okay.
As there was also the host communities fighting at the PIB hearing. And of course, the brawl among lawmakers during the consideration of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. The 9th National Assembly is gone, and the 10th Assembly is already facing what seems like a leadership crisis, considering the unresolved issues within the ruling party. Hopefully, this will not affect the business of lawmaking, oversight effectiveness, or independence of the legislature as enshrined in the Constitution. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Meanwhile, Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara has reiterated the state's support for the APC's preferred choices of Senator Godswill Akpabio as Senate President and Honorable Tajuddin Abbas as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. Governor Fubara stated this during a meeting with the re-elected and newly elected members of the National Assembly from the state in the Executive Council chambers of the Government House in Port Harcourt. He assured the members-elect of continued support to remain relevant in national affairs.
Rivers State is going to support the interests of Nigeria in the forthcoming election to elect leaders of both the Senate and the House of Reps. And we're not going to joke about it. For anybody who should do anything contrary to that, we know what to do.
Staying with the coming inauguration of the 10th National Assembly, the convener of the Northern Elders Forum, Professor Ango Abdullahi, is drawing attention to the consequences of imposing a candidate on elected federal lawmakers in the ongoing National Assembly leadership race. The elder statesman, who spoke to journalists in the nation's capital, Abuja, maintained that the independence of the legislative arm of government is important in a democracy, and the leadership recruitment process in it must be done in accordance with the Constitution. He also cautioned political parties against having an overbearing influence on elected members in their choice of principal officers.
The ruling party is not in charge of the National Assembly. The National Assembly is an independent body. The ruling party has members in the National Assembly, and they may direct their members to do what their party would want them to do. But then they should allow other members of the National Assembly who don't belong to that ruling party to also exercise their rights. So as far as we know, and in our own various discussions at the level of society, particularly at our level in the Northern Elders Forum, is to emphasize this point. The Constitution should be strictly adhered to by all concerned. And here by all concerned, I mean that the major concern is the National Assembly trying, or that is expected after declaration, to decide who will be the President of the Senate and who will be the Speaker and the other various other appendages that go with them. The National Assembly members-elect should be left entirely alone to decide who their leaders would be in a process that the Assembly, the various chambers have themselves decided. They have rules.
In part two, after the break, we have more on the 9th National Assembly and will be joined by former Chairman, House Committee Judiciary, to examine the achievements of the lawmakers. Plus, the Department of State Services confirms the suspended governor of the CBN, Godwin Emefiele, is in its custody for investigation after earlier denying arresting him. Well, that's in a moment. So stay with us. Welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching the news at 10, live on Channels Television. A reminder of our top stories. The curtain is drawn on the activities of the 9th National Assembly as members of the upper legislative chamber take turns to speak on their accomplishments in the past 4 years. He is in our custody. The Department of State Service confirms the suspended governor of the CBN, Godwin Emefiele, is undergoing investigation at its facility after earlier denying arresting him. A court strikes out Labour Party presidential candidate Peter Obi's application to question INEC over alleged technical glitches which were witnessed on the IREV after tendering video evidence before the tribunal. And 4 children found alive after surviving a plane crash and spending weeks in Colombia's Amazon jungle. The Department of State Services, DSS, has confirmed that it has in its custody the suspended central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele. A spokesperson of the DSS, Peter Afonaya, made this known in a statement explaining that Mr. Emefiele is with them for some investigative reasons. Mr. Afonaya had earlier today debunked reports that Mr. Emefiele had been arrested by its operatives, but in a video that has now gone viral, Mr. Emefiele could be seen being led from a vehicle into a waiting plane by persons suspected to be DSS officials. Mr. Emefiele was suspended by the president yesterday, sequel to what the SG's office described as an investigation of his office and the planned reforms in the financial sector of the economy. It was directed to hand over his duties to the Deputy Governor Operations Directorate, who will act as a central bank governor pending the conclusion of investigation and reforms. The suspended CBN governor had been in the eye of a storm following the Apex Bank's Naira redesign policy in the run-up to the 2023 general elections. Meanwhile, former governor of Rivers State, Nyesom Wike, has applauded President Tinubu's suspension of Mr. Godwin Emefiele as CBN governor. Mr. Wike, who was one of the critics of the CBN's policies, especially the Naira redesign, noted in a statement that the president's decision is bold and timely. The former Rivers State governor also commended the president for approving uniformity in the retirement age and the pension of judicial officers in the country. He says he and other G5 members are impressed that the president is showing exemplary leadership that he says will lead the country to prosperity. For the Labour Party, the decision of the president to suspend the CBN governor without seeking the permission of the National Assembly is unconstitutional. The party maintains in a statement that the action was not in good taste. The acting National Publicity Secretary of the Labour Party, Mr. Obiorifo, in a statement notes that most Nigerians will not forget in a hurry the famous Naira redesign policy initiated by Mr. Emefiele primarily to check vote buying in the last general election. The party also says if indeed there is any government agency that should be investigated, it should be the Independent National Electoral Commission. It adds that INEC asked and received over 300 billion naira in taxpayers' money to conduct an election which it describes as a mockery of democracy. Well, staying with the suspension and arrest of former CBN governor, a group of lawyers under the aegis of Lawyers in Defense of Democracy, of Human Rights and Justice are calling for the immediate release of Mr. Godwin Emefiele. The convener of the group, Mr. Kingdom Okere, told a news conference in Abuja that there is a subsisting court order restricting the DSS from arresting him.
There is a valid court order restraining the State Security Service from arresting Mr. Godwin Emefiele on exactly same issues for which he has now been arrested by the DSS at the wee hours of today. That is around 2 a.m. in the morning, that is in the midnight. He was arrested like a common criminal in a country where the rule of law operates. It's the governor of the central bank. You announce his suspension merely one or 2 hours after announcing his suspension. He was arrested in the wee hours of today by 2 a.m. like a common criminal. Honorable Justice M.A. Hassan of the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, had on the 29th day of December 2022 restrained the State Security Service from inviting, harassing, intimidating, arresting, detaining, interrogating Mr. Godwin Emefiele on any issues bordering on the trumped-up, fraudulently, falsely concocted terrorism charges It is on this note that we call on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu to immediately order the unconditional release of Godwin Emefiele from illegal detention of the State Security Service. It is illegal because there is a pending judgment of a court of competent jurisdiction, which the DSS participated throughout the proceedings, and the judgment was against them. They have not, up to today, they have not appealed against that judgment.
Well, to the courts now, where the Presidential Elections Petition Court has struck out the application by the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, seeking to interrogate the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, over the alleged glitches which INEC results viewing portal experienced during the presidential election. The court ruled that the petitioner, as Mr. Obi, did not file his application within the stipulated time frame. However, Mr. Obi tendered video evidence in court, just as a presidential candidate of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Atiku Abubakar, called additional 2 witnesses to testify during today's proceedings.
Counsels to the presidential candidate of the Labour Party, Mr. Peter Obi, and some chieftains of the party are in court as proceedings resume at the appeal court in Abuja. Mr. Peter Obi, through his counsels, is expected to tender further evidence in court, as well as call up witnesses to testify. Before the petitioner tenders his evidence for the day, the presiding judge, Justice Haruna Tsammani, delivers a ruling on an earlier application filed by Mr. Peter Obi seeking to question INEC over the alleged technical glitches it experienced with the INEC results viewing portal IREV during the presidential election. The panel of 5 justices unanimously ruled that the application be struck out as it was not filed within the required time frame. However, the petitioner, Mr. Peter Obi, tenders additional evidence in the form of INEC documents from 6 local government councils in Benue State. He also called up a subpoenaed witness who presented 3 pieces of video evidence which was played in the open court. The videos contain clips of a pre-election news conference by the INEC chairman, the appearance of Mr. Festus Okoye on Channels Television's political program Politics Today, and a clip of Senator Bola Tinubu announcing his running mate in Daura, Katsina State.
We wanted to put certain questions to INEC, and we didn't file the application within time. With regards to the purported technical glitch, how it affects only presidential and did not affect National Assembly. And in the wisdom of their lordships, they say the application ought to have been filed earlier. And so because it was not filed earlier, the characteristically as Judas should do, they struck it out. So there is no devastating consequences as you may be thinking of, because there are many ways to kill the rat. And then we'll have other ways to invite INEC to come and answer the questions.
Back in the courtroom, the presidential candidate of the PDP calls additional 2 witnesses to prove his case. The 2 witnesses, who were all ad hoc staff of the Independent National Electoral Commission during the February 2023 presidential election, bring the total number of witnesses called by Mr. Abubakar to testify in his case to 18. The court has now adjourned the 2 cases to Tuesday, June the 13th for further hearing.
And now to infrastructure. More residents of Anambra State have continued to commend the impact of the second Niger Bridge on businesses in the area since its commissioning on May the 23rd. A visit to the bridge reveals that vehicles drive on it unhindered, fading off memories of traffic congestion that characterized roads in the area prior to the commissioning.
Accessing the second Niger Bridge from the Obosi interchange on the Anambra side will take one from the south, passing through Onitsha-Owerri Road, Ogbaru, and to Asaba on the bridge, and in just a few minutes too, without any delay arising from traffic. It's indeed a development that has made life easier for everyone in the state. A visit to the location reveals that it is becoming a Herculean task for officials of the Federal Road Safety Corps assigned to the area to ensure motorists coming from the Onitsha-Owerri Road axis and heading towards Obosi interchange to use the proper route instead of driving against traffic. Some recalcitrant drivers take advantage of the wide expanse of the road to drive against traffic. This is the ideal point of diversion where vehicles going to Enugu and other parts of the east through Obosi interchange are supposed to make a U-turn to avoid collision with other oncoming vehicles. From the bridge, an overview of the Onitsha-Owerri Road also shows free flow of traffic, unlike before, when gridlock could delay motorists for hours, especially during festive periods. As we journey onwards, it's a smooth drive through Ogbaru and to the exact spot of the bridge, which seems deserted as few vehicles drive past. Our journey also leads us to a deserted toll gate area. Residents hail the impact of the second Niger Bridge.
The road workers know very well what that project, at least to them, what that means. Because if we are to, just imagine someone who is on the transporter that is supposed to ply that route 3 times a day, but without that bridge, he prays to pass through it once a day. Now, if you imagine the returns we'll be getting, and he made some of them, they don't even ply that route again because they see that a waste of time to ply that route. So you will see that for those transporters, it will be easier to be plying that route again, but making maybe 3-4 times a day, and they make their living from that transport. So to them, it is now they are benefiting from it.
For traffic control officers in the area, the second Niger Bridge comes with a whole lot of relief as it takes vehicular pressure off the major cities in the state.
The second Niger Bridge has really helped us at personally because all the cars coming from the south heading to other eastern states don't have to come through Onitsha.
It has eased a lot of things for us. Then for business purposes, it has also helped. I know so many Anambarians that used to go to Delta, Kabanam, Samaria, Ela to buy vegetables. They stopped coming because of the hold-on. But the bridge was commissioned. Those who needed to were going there to buy foodstuffs after they're doing their businesses. So everything has changed. We are so happy.
These developments are bound to impact positively on commerce and the productivity of the workforce in states that are in proximity to the second Niger Bridge.
Well, let's now bring you more on our lead story, the valedictory session of the 9th Senate, where some lawmakers recall the significant legislations which were passed in the last 4 years, as well as the unity amongst the legislators despite different political affiliations. Our correspondent, Linda Akibe, reports.
There's a time for new beginnings and a time for endings. And after 4 years, the end has come for the 9th Senate. Before bidding goodbye, the Senate holds a valedictory session to commemorate the end of the 9th Assembly. Lawmakers trickle into the Senate chamber, ready for the session to begin. The upper chamber suspends its rules to allow members who have moved to the executive arm access the chamber. The Senate clerk presents the certificate of legislative service to the Senate President, Senator Ahmed Lawan, and the Deputy Senate President, Senator Ovie Omagigi. The Senate President then issues the certificate of legislative service to his colleagues.
Senator Obinna Joseph Awa, please.
The floor is open for remarks by senators. Some of them are emotional as they recount their experiences in the last 4 years.
I went through one of my best time in life in the Senate, and also went through one of my difficult period. Also in this Senate. Before I came to the Senate, before I came into politics, I can buy anything body can buy. I'm not a thief. Those that put me in prison know the reason they put me in prison. They took over all my businesses and want to kill me. But I survived it. I'm in the Senate with you people.
Since I've joined this National Assembly, it is always time for us to come and say goodbye to people that you don't want to part with. Yes, we have done all we could. We have cooperated that much. But can we say we have succeeded when 75% of us are not coming back?
It's also an avenue for the legislators to offer words of advice to the incoming lawmakers.
We have to make the necessary sacrifice, which starts with the new 10th Assembly.
And so I will urge the government and the 10th Senate to look at the issues of the political and administrative structure for the people of the FCT.
So, Mr. President, for the incoming Senate, please, and you will be the special advisor to that particular Senate, special advisor extraordinary. Once a motion is taken on the floor of the Senate, and that motion is also taken in the House of Reps, or vice versa, and if the agreement is the same, then the executive must be compelled to adhere, to give effect to that particular motion and the prayers therein.
The issue of the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill, I want to request that the government makes it an executive bill so that no senator and no member of the National Assembly will be able to have a dissenting voice.
The President of the Senate makes his final speech.
A healthy and constructive relationship between the executive and the legislative arms promotes stability and continuity in governance. By working together these past 4 years, we have positively addressed pressing national issues, resolve conflicts, and maintain political stability, which is crucial for economic growth, social development, and improved public trust in the government.
The Senate President becomes emotional at the response of his colleagues.
Thank you.
The curtain finally closes for the 9th Senate. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
Now, for more perspectives on the achievements of the 9th National Assembly at large, we're joined on the news at 10 from our Abuja studio by former Chairman, House Committee on Judiciary, Mr. Emefiele. Thank you for joining us on the news at 10. Well, the valedictory sessions in both chambers, as we've seen, have been quite emotional for the members. So for those who may be wondering, what exactly are they emotional about? You were not just close to the action, you were right in the middle of the action. Perhaps you can give an insight.
Thank you, Kayode. Good evening and good evening, Nigerians. It's not easy for you to be in a place in a period of 4 years and you appear there almost every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, and some of them you get to associate with them in committee work, go on oversight function, and so your life has become intertwined. Together, you've had shared experiences, you've had down moment, you've had great moment, like in the House of Representatives. We've had situations where we lost some of our colleagues, and then some of those people happened to sit maybe some few rows away from us. And so we've had people that we gathered, like I said, during our valedictory, we gathered as strangers, but along the line, we made friends, we built relationships that will last for a lifetime. And imagine you not going to be, yes, we are going to still be seeing ourselves, building on that relationship, but it's not going to be as frequent as it used to be when you were actively out there. And so I believe the totality of all these, the totality of the moments we are going to miss, the friends we are going to miss, the periods that we used to exchange banters that we're going to miss makes it emotional. And just like when we're in school, and then at the end of term or at the end of a particular school period, they will say, oh, we are partying valedictory. It's always emotional. Partying for those with good minds, for those with human heart, and for those who believe in humanity, those who believe in relationship, those who believe in networking. And that's what makes it a very emotional moment.
Well, for a lot of members of the 9th Assembly, they will not be returning for the 10th Assembly like yourself. But, you know, the chairman of the Assembly, the former Senate president now, also spoke about that rubber stamp issue, where it was called that, he said that you've suffered from negative stereotypes. But when people weigh the fact that a lot of people are not returning, and then that, well, stereotype, which he called it, some see it as the evaluation of your performance. But talk to us from your constituents. What feedback are you getting regarding how well you have performed or otherwise?
I want to lay this foundation. While, just like the 10th National Assembly is going to be inaugurated, immediately after the elections, the 9th National Assembly agenda was already set by Nigerians. Nigerians listed the things they wanted as top priority. It resonated from people in the local constituencies, even to the national, to the state capitals. And priority on that was the reforms in the oil and gas industry in the country, electoral reforms to make for credible electoral management system was top on the agenda. And then top on the agenda for the youth of this country was a legislative and maybe institutional framework to be able to aid them in their tech ecosystem, to be able to aid their startups. Not again on the agenda, top on the agenda too, said by Nigerians, were the issue of police reforms. Top on the agenda too were issues of justice sector reforms. And so looking at these, we had to formalize all these priorities of Nigerians into a legislative agenda. In the House, in this case, in the House of Representatives specifically, I know the Senate did theirs, and we used that as a compass, a legislative agenda to show us where to go, to give us a sense of direction on what Nigerians expect. And so looking at the things Nigerians expected and looking that reflected in our legislative agenda, we could beat our chest and said we have done a great deal. And I would speak with evidence in point. Let's look at the power sector. Nigerians had complained about the poor power network in the country.
Right.
And we took that into consideration, and we asked questions, what can we do? And within the context of the powers given to us, which is purely that of legislation,
right,
what can we do to be able to strengthen the judiciary, to be able to strengthen the executive to perform its function? And so we said we needed to empower the state to play in areas that it's only in the exclusive preserve of the federal government. That is them getting to delist totally power transmission from the executive, exclusive legislative list, right, to a concurrent list. That is, the states can now legislate on areas that have been covered by, even by National Grid. And we went a step further to be able to enact the Electricity and Power Sector Reforms Act, which Mr. President, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has just given his assent. I thank Mr. President for giving that assent to that act.
Mr. Luke, if I may come in there, still on that point you were making, incidentally, about the president, he has not hidden his preference. Neither has the APC hidden its preference for who should lead the 10th Assembly. So let's look ahead, if we can. We just listened to Professor Ango Abdullahi saying that there will be consequences if there is interference in that process of, choosing leaders for the National Assembly, especially under a democracy where, all of these arms need to be independent. So do you agree with those that say, well, maybe this is too much interference?
Kayode, yes, we might see it from one perspective, from a point of interference, but they say he who wears the shoes knows where it pinches. The president or the governor of a state is the chief versioner. He has his own vision, he has his own idea, just like what we've seen in the country today, that Mr. President, I am not a member of his party, I did not support him in his election, but I supported the actions he has taken so far. It goes to show that he had a plan for Nigeria and is executing that plan. And so you need the legislature that is going to buy into your plans, buy into your programs. And there is nothing wrong. And I want to say here, with all sense of responsibility, it has always been so. The executive, the president of the country, who is the leader of their party, has always shown an indication where he would likely want the leadership of the National Assembly to go to. It happened under President Muhammadu Buhari, Giseva, the former president of the country, who, through his body language, has shown that he would prefer an Ahmed Lawan as the Senate president, and he would prefer Efemi Gbajabiamila as the Speaker of the House of Representatives. The only difference now is that, between now and then, is that it was not, it was just discussed in hushed tones. But we've had a president using his party to say clearly, this is where I am going, and he is trying to stop those who probably would be contesting not to spend so much money. And we are in a guided democracy in Africa. We are in a journey until we get to an El Dorado, right. And we cannot divulge the influence of the executive in what is happening in the legislature, because they need that synergy. Look at what has happened in the 9th National Assembly.
Right.
It's because of that synergy with the executive, because Mr. President Muhammadu Buhari made an indication, made through his body language, communicated through his caucus, communicated through his men, where he would want the leadership of the National Assembly, both in the Senate and the House of Representatives, to go to. Right. And that is why we have had the cooperation, and that is why we've been able to have the successes we've been able to record, though we have rooms for improvement. Okay. So there's nothing wrong in the President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, GCFR, through his party, showing an indication that Senator Godswill Akpabio should be the preferred for the Senate president.
Well, I think that's a great place.
Honorable Tajuddin Abbas should be the preferred for the House of Representatives.
I think that's a great place to anchor. Mr. Emefiele, former chairman, House Committee on the Judiciary, thank you so much for your time on the News at 10.
Thank you, Coyote.
Well, let's now head over to Kaduna State, where residents of Rigasa community in the Gabi local government area have held a peaceful protest over long months of poor power supply in the area by the Kaduna Electricity Distribution Company. But the aggrieved residents who took their protest to the headquarters of the company say they have suffered untold economic hardship due to lack of electricity supply for a long time. On its part, though, the management of the Kaduna Electricity Company attributes the low supply of electricity to the minimum supply it receives from the Transmission Company of Nigeria, as well as rising cases of energy theft by electricity consumers.
We have conducted survey with the citizens. Citizens have agreed to pay for the electricity, but they have refused to give us light. During the Ramadan period, we did not get light of up to 48 hours in the 30 days of Ramadan. And we have called on the area manager, we called on the managing director, we've called on all relevant stakeholders. We have sat down with traditional rulers, religious leaders, politicians, and what we want is peace. We are tired of, they say, violence in community, trying to attack their workers. So we don't want such things to keep continuing. So that's why we came to the headquarters to actually send the message to the whole country, to Kaduna State government, and also to the headquarters of Kaduna Electric that we are not here for violence. All we are here after is a peaceful demonstration to tell them that if there is no light, there will be no pay.
We had an engagement with them, with our MD in attendance, and they heard all their grievances, and we acknowledged them, and we said that we will do all that we can to see that supply improves in their communities. And even prior to that engagement, we have had series of engagements with them. We have sat down with them to discuss issues either at their location or they come to our head office, and then we have found and we agreed on the steps to take to move forward. And one of the steps is that if supply improves, they should also improve on their collection.
Well, staying in Kaduna, but on security this time around, where the military says troops of Operation Forest Sanity, in conjunction with the Defense Headquarters Special Forces, have neutralized 6 bandits during an operation in Giwa local government area. The Director of Defense Media Operations, Major General Musa Demmadami, who made this known in a statement, explains that the 6 bandits were killed in a gun battle yesterday. following a raid on their hideout at Meidaro village by the special forces. It says that several arms and ammunition were equally recovered by the operatives, while the camps of the bandits were also destroyed. Let's switch gears now on the news at 10. It is time for Business News with Ladi Williams.
Thanks, Kayode. On business news, Nigeria's currency, the naira, fell to its lowest level against the dollar at investors' and exporters' window of the forex market following the suspension of a central bank governor, Godwin Emefiele, from office by President Bola Tinubu. This comes amidst ongoing investigation of Mr. Emefiele's office by the Department of State Security over planned reforms in Nigeria's financial sector and other matters. The figure, which is the currency's lowest level since its creation in that space back in 2017, represents a 0.63% drop when compared to 469 naira 50 kobo to $1 quoted at the official foreign exchange market on Thursday. The currency traders say most of them who participated at the foreign exchange auction on Friday maintained bids between 460 naira lower and 477 naira higher bid against the dollar. The Nigeria Securities and Exchange Commission has declared the operation of Binance Nigeria Limited, a local subsidiary of the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, as illegal. In a statement published on its website, the capital market regulator explained that the company is neither registered nor regulated by the Commission, and its operations in Nigeria are therefore void. The Commission also directed Binance Nigeria to immediately stop soliciting Nigerian investors in any form whatsoever and warned that any member of the investing public dealing with the entity is doing so at his or her own risk. Meanwhile, Binance Holdings Limited clarified that Binance Nigeria Limited is not affiliated to the cryptocurrency exchange platform Binance Holdings Limited. And despite profit-taking in 3 sessions, the domestic stock market ended the week with a 0.20% rise in the all-share index as it dropped below the 56,000 points. The moderate gain, which countered the impact of sell pressure from other high-value equities, is largely attributed to investor interest in Airtel Africa's 1.8% price advance, which lifted the market's overall value. Sectoral performance of equities was also mostly positive, except for the industrial goods counter, while the activity chart was weaker than the previous week as trading volume and value declined by 15.1% and 1.4% week on week. Meanwhile, the shares of Eterna is top among 51 gainers with a 45.41% increase. John Holt leads 26 others down by 26.7%, while the trio of UBA, FCMB, Niger Police, Microfinance Bank are major contributors to a total of 2.19 billion shares traded this week. And forex trading on the FMDQ exchange ended the week negative. Its total transactions across the market fell by 65.03% to $840.68 million. The decline, which is in contrast to last week's figure, is largely attributed to nearly 84% drop in the value of forex transactions from the futures as well as the FX derivatives market, while the FX spot market recorded a 13.49% decline. On the other hand, the forwards market recorded nearly 530% increase in the value of transactions. Meanwhile, the value of the naira on the average Nigerian autonomous exchange fixed rate fell by more than 0.5% week on week to 467 naira 97 kobo against the dollar as of June the 9th. And that's business news. Back to Kaide with the rest of the news at 10.
Well, thank you, Ladi. Let's talk education now. As students of the Federal Government Girls' College, Benin have been challenged to aim high and strive to excel in all endeavors as they have the capacity to accomplish whatever goals they set for themselves. Well, the wife of the governor of Edo State, Mrs. Betsy Obaseki, and some other foundation students of the school gave the advice during an event to kickstart activities marking the 50th anniversary of the school in October this year.
It's a grand welcome for the wife of the governor of Edo State and some other foundation students of the Federal Government Girls College, Benin, who are returning to the alma mater for the first time in a long time. The reception continues in the school's assembly hall with a display of cultural dance steps. Then it's time for the school authorities to reel out their achievements in the past years.
In 2015, the school came first in performance in the WAEC among the 104 unity schools in Nigeria. In 2016, we also came third nationwide. In 2018, we came out second throughout the federation. Since 2015 to date, our performance in WAEC has never gone below 99.6%.
The head girl of the school captures the message from the students.
As students, we are so glad that one of our own is the First Lady of the state. You are actually a great motivation to all the students of this college. Mom, we have heard of your giant strides, especially your commitment to the fight against sexual and gender-based violence in the state, and other great achievements that you recorded, both within and outside the country. And we are proud to have an alumna of this college as our role model.
Set big goals, exceed past glories. These are just some of the encouraging words the students get from the foundation students, including the wife of the governor of Edo State, Mrs. Betsy Obaseki.
We have all done something because this school gave us the right foundation. So strive to attain to be the best. There are no barriers, there's no limitation. Your executive governor is focused on education, so you have no excuse.
So proud to be part of you. So proud to come and find that our school, which was set up 50 years ago, is waxing stronger and stronger in every respect. For any school to be great and to attain greatness, you must have traditions, and you must stick to the tradition. You must remember the beginning. That's why we foundation members are very important to you. You must reckon with us for as long as we live.
The indoor event ends thereafter, followed by a quick tour of the school's facilities, which naturally evokes some air of nostalgia.
This is my bed.
In all, it's a pleasurable visit for the various parties, and the students look forward to more of such visits from the former students of the school, especially as preparations continue toward the school's 50th anniversary in October. Jessica Onugusaya, Channels Television News.
I'll begin with the big one. Manchester City have tasted Champions League glory at last, as the second half Rodri strike gave the favourites a 1-0 victory over Inter Milan in a tense final. Rodri fired in from a Bernardo Silva cutback midway through the second half at the Ataturk Olympic Stadium to decide the game. Having already claimed a 5th Premier League title in 6 seasons and added the FA Cup, Manchester City are the first English club to win such a treble since Manchester United in 1999. Meanwhile, Manchester City fans, as expected, are celebrating their team's victory, courtesy midfielder Rodri's only goal in their Champions League final against Inter Milan in Istanbul. The victory sealed a historic treble for Manchester City, who have now equaled the greatest achievement of their cross-city rivals. And let's bring you more stories now. 4 children have been found alive after surviving a plane crash and spending weeks fending for themselves in Colombia's Amazon jungle. The siblings, aged 13, 9, 4, and 1, were initially treated by military medics who had been in the search party looking for them. Their mother and 2 pilots were killed when their light aircraft crashed in the jungle on May the 1st. The missing 4 became the focus of a huge rescue operation involving dozens of soldiers and local people. The children who belonged to the Hoitoto indigenous group were missing for 40 days. And the main news again. Members of the upper legislative chamber of the 9th National Assembly today held their valedictory session as lawmakers took turns to speak on their accomplishments in the last 4 years. The Department of State Service confirmed that the suspended governor of the CBN, Godwin Emefiele, was undergoing investigation at its facility after earlier denying arresting him. Well, that's the news at 10:49, everyone. Thank you for watching. I'm Kaido Hikulu, and good night.